So I guess we're here to talk about this. You guys can't look behind you, but I'll do it for you. Because in seeing this movie and just thinking about so much of the stuff you've done, and it really plays with or connects to stuff that you, Brad and Leo have done, is that so many of your movies are not only about time, but about kind of reconciling yourself between living in the present or sticking with the past. I mean, you think about your character in Django, he's this guy who's wedded to the past, who can't commit to the present. You think about your character you go back to Bastards, he's basically a guy who's moving towards the future, who's trying to get away from the present. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about that idea of sort of being stuck between these poles, which is what this movie is kind of about in a lot of ways, isn't it?
Yes, it is actually. It's and with the three characters that these three actors are representing, I'm kind of doing an interesting looking at Hollywood through a social strata. All right, and each three of these characters represent somebody on a different level of the social strata in Hollywood. You have Rick, who had his day, and he's still having his day. It's just not as good as it was, but he's still doing pretty good in his career, and he has a nice house. So, he's become a good, established working actor. He would like to be doing better, but it's still a good, solid existence. But people in Hollywood, somebody with a nice, solid existence, not doing what they want to be doing, but doing okay and have done okay enough to get a good house, can actually live next door to somebody who is doing magnificent. You have great success and great failure, literally living, in some cases, literally next door to each other. And then you have, and she's enjoying the high life. She's enjoying, being at the center of the zeitgeist.
But she's also, we're talking about time, it's almost like past, present, future.
Absolutely.
She's the future.
She absolutely is the future. And then Cliff represents these people who've worked in the entertainment business their whole life and really almost have nothing to show for it. He would say, "I work in Hollywood. I work in Hollywood. I live in Hollywood." He doesn't even live in Hollywood. He spends his whole day doing chores and errands around Hollywood, then gets on 3 different freeways to go home. Which is Van Nuys in the Valley, and but nevertheless, these 3 different representatives pretty much kind of cover the gambit of kind of the social breakdown that you could see on a set at any given time.
But also, too, again, for me, thematically, I want to ask you about this a little bit too, Margot, because Sharon does kind of represent the future. I mean, she's looking ahead. She's somebody who's really open to possibility in the way that lots of these guys aren't. I just wonder if that was something you thought about in terms of seeing this character on the page and just seeing how she's embracing things and almost leaning forward in a lot of ways and in performance terms.
Definitely. And it was something that we spoke about a lot, the idea that Hollywood was going through this shift of what was relevant, what felt cool, and, even something as innocuous as mentioning what hairstyle the characters have, which Quentin does in the script, kind of gives you an idea of the people who are kind of stuck in the past and the old version and the people who are kind of moving forward into this new version. You got movies like Easy Rider suddenly out where the aesthetic is totally different, and previously, like you said, she has jumped into a Hollywood that is kind of the future version of what you then go on to keep seeing in the 70s and 80s and so on. But I love too the aspect of that being, and something that also is relevant to the story, but like this open door policy where, she would pick up a hitchhiker and you could have that, I read about Roman and Sharon having dinner parties where there would just be a whole mix of people, whether it was someone who just like wandered in off the street and they're just a hippie, or someone who was a politician at the time, or a old school movie star, whatever it was. I liked too that
Jasper John sitting next to Tony Curtis.
Yeah, but I love that idea.
Sitting next to Mama Cass.
That the future was this idea of where hey, everyone's welcome, and that was a cool idea, I think, at the time.
Yeah, because you're talking about this, how stratified it was, and the future is about all those walls being broken down. I mean, Rick lives in this world that's pretty kind of circumscribed, right, where he knew exactly what he was doing, and I want to get you to weigh on this a little bit too, Leo, just this idea that he really is so wedded to the past, he can't really see the present in front of him, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, what was so interesting from just initially reading the movie was the perspective that Quentin took on Hollywood. It's Once Upon a Time in the Hollywood, but these sort of working class guys, and it's a very voyeuristic view at a world that they kind of don't belong to, that sort of passed them by. And Rick is, in a way, a relic of that. You know, we talked a lot about, you know, what type of actor Rick is. I think he has the potential. He would have had the potential to make the TV to movie transition if he applied himself, but he just didn't have that sort of training. He was never. And this movie is so interesting because it's 2 days in a life of, I feel like, this kind of very transitional period in Rick's life where he's realizing that not only has, you know, the culture passed him by, but the industry is sort of washing over him like a wave, and he has to adapt. And this little girl on set kind of this young Meryl Streep that's 9 years old kind of says, you know, things aren't that bad. You know, maybe you should take your job a little seriously, which is something that I don't think Rick ever dawned on, didn't ever occur to him. So, but it's so interesting, not only the voyeuristic view of being these insiders, these best friends that have been sort of navigating their way through Hollywood, looking next door at Sharon Tate and
looking
Polanski.
next to the future, by the way.
Yeah, and looking at how culture is changing, films are changing, the boat that they missed, the train that they missed, how this industry has passed them by, but also the fact that it's all done in these sort of, so much is captured within 2 days. And so much of the backstory of what happened to all of us was so easily incorporated into our characters without not necessarily having to say it overtly. It was just implicit. And that was what was great about, I think, especially for Brad and I, giving this entire history, this massive book about what we'd done in the past, what we'd been through, the films that we've been through, the, you know, trials and tribulations, we just kind of stepped into these shoes because not only do we get that backstory, but we kind of have been in the industry ourselves as well. And we know that we're lucky. We know that we got that one opportunity very early on that gave us the ability to have a career.
We all almost got Boy's Life, and you know the guy who almost got Thelma and Louise. Right. And they know who you guys are.
The two guys who got it before me.
Right.
Yeah. I want you to bring awareness a little bit too, Brad, just because Cliff seems like this guy was really in the moment, so much so that he doesn't think about worrying about where literally his next meal is going to come from. It's almost like he's in this weird way, almost like a pre-hippie or a beatnik.
Well, it's this kind of Zen Buddhist air that Quentin wrote into Cliff. He's it's no hassle in the castle, man. It's we'll figure it out as we go along. And I really appreciate that about him. I appreciate that in people. You know, the ability to embrace your I don't know if lot in life is right, but you're certainly where you're existing. You know what unfolds in that day, and Cliff just seems to roll with that. It's what I like so much about the characters that Quentin wrote for us. They're like flip sides of that argument that's always gone, you know, that's going on in at least in my mind. This side that is, you know, you're dealing with your shortcomings. You're punishing yourself in some way. You're looking at the world as not as things not going your way, versus the place where after that the conversation you have where you do get to a place of peace. You get to a place of acceptance, and you get to and you know everything's going to be all right. And it's these between us. I see a whole individual.
Yeah, well, I think Rick is definitely the angsty Kerouac of the group, where Cliff is definitely the Neil Cassidy holy goof, right, of the group, being very comfortable in his trailer full of garbage. But there's also a reason, though. I mean,
cool
Cliff,
garbage.
Yeah, cool, very cool garbage. Good taste in comic books, especially. But See, Cliff could have a whole other reality as far as where his life could be right now. And because he could have gone to jail for the rest of his life, and he didn't. And so every day out of jail is a
breeze.
Is a
fucking
day,
great day.
a day of gratitude.
His trailer is a duplex by comparison.
But it's also there's a kind of this thing too where every place he goes feels like home to him. I mean, every place he enters feels like a place where he's immediately comfortable. Whereas when Rick walks into a room, you can see he's almost sizing the thing up and looking at literally at his place physically, but also his social place. And Sharon, when she walks into a place, she throws her head back and takes a breath like, what is this going to be today? What am I going to see? I just wonder if you guys actually saw that, because I think about time being really what the movie's about. And that's why it's so interesting that this is a title for this. And to start with you in terms of talking about that title and that time weighs so heavily in it.
Well, I think that the title came up from the idea to try to give it both the fairy tale connotation of those words, but also the Leone-esque epicness of this is the last word on this subject, whether it is or not. But I'm working as if it is.
But in Leone terms, it's also in the way that those movies are always about the end of an era.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And this is that too.
No, this is definitely that. I mean, one of the things actually to go back to both this question and the question you asked earlier that I think is very interesting, an interesting thing that is played out subtextually, so you have to kind of be on the right wavelength to get it, is just to show you kind of how Rick is not with this zeitgeist that's going on right now, this new Hollywood world, is literally the fact that he still wears a pompadour in a time where Elvis doesn't wear a pompadour anymore, Ed Burns doesn't wear a pompadour anymore, but he still kind of sticks with what he knew. Running a pompadour, running a pocket comb through his pompadour kind of looked like a lot of leading men of his day, and so you don't see him transitioning to the new Hollywood movies and working with Bob Fosse or Sam Peckinpah or people like that. And he doesn't see that either. He sees himself in the past. But then when he does this Lancer TV show, and he's not playing just a standard issue heavy, he's actually playing a kind of an interesting character. And the director of the piece wants him to have a different look. So for the first time in his life,
He's dragged into the present.
yeah, for the first time in his life, except possibly even more of a flat top that he might have had in '55. He's actually wearing a different look than he's ever worn in a movie before, and it's a long-haired look, and it's a mustache that gives him almost a William Smith leading a biker gang kind of look.
And the fringe jacket.
And the fringe jacket, all right, which is which has a zeitgeisty vibe. And you look at Rick in that outfit, and you can imagine him in a Sam Peckinpah movie. You can imagine him in a Richard Rush movie. You can imagine him doing new Hollywood movies. And maybe he even though I don't know if he thinks that way, but it isn't done for him. There could be another view of him if he could see it.
Right. And we had a lot of discussions about that makeup too, because one of the more pivotal moments for Rick as a character is with the young girl, and we discussed whether I should have that makeup on, and he said something we thought about it for a couple of days. He goes, you know what? I like you as the Cowardly Lion. I like you with this foppish sort of wig on and this mustache, coming to this self-realization of who you are and where the world is at, and having to confront that and being in that makeup all day. And I was like, wow. And once we made that sort of decision, everything kind of became more tragic, because it was it became this, like I said, all this is condensed in a couple days, but it became this sort of pivotal turning point for the character.
It's interesting you say that, because so much of what he wears feels like a costume in a way it doesn't for Sharon or for Cliff. But in that particular moment, when he steps off the set, you can feel he's almost trapped in this thing. He wants to rip off the hair and take off. You can see he's physically almost rejecting this outfit.
Not only that, the 1960s and the hippie revolution is like imprinted on Rick now. He has to deal with it head on, these damn hippies that are taking over.
You want me to look like a hippie? Think less hippie, more Hells Angels. Well, okay.
That I get.
But same for Sharon in the way that she's like not only just embracing America, but embracing Europe. I mean, with this guy who really is a break from everything that Hollywood is, and this guy that maybe,
And her Texas past.
yes.
And she lived in Europe too when she was a teenager, actually. No, I did. I feel I saw the qualities both in the way Quentin had written the character of Sharon, but also real life Sharon and the things I'd read and seen about her. She did feel like a very open person. Like she felt very open to opportunities and experiences and felt very accepting. And it's something people spoke about when describing her, is that she was very open-armed. And I love that you appreciate it. Yes, I did want to walk into every room and look around and kind of have the body language that signals I'm open for this experience and for whatever it is, and I'm excited. And
It's not just open, it's almost like she's eager for experience, which I thought, I hadn't seen you do anything quite like that before, and I kind of wonder where that came from.
no, and it's funny, yeah, it's actually weirdly required more brain power than I feel it did to go to some dark places sometimes. I feel like I don't know, it's kind of easier to click into that I want to be down, angry, closed. That sort of stuff. I know I've played in characters before, but this was something different, and it was a joy. It really was a joy to do that. But she was eager, and I think that all of that gives it this feeling of hope, and this. I think it represents the youth and the innocence at the stage of life she was in. She was young and on the precipice of great things and already doing great things. And yeah, the world was kind of her oyster at that point. It wanted to represent those hopeful feelings.
It's funny they're sitting like this too, because there's almost this arc between Sharon and Cliff in that same way, where she's eager for experience. He's experienced everything, but he hasn't closed himself off. And I wonder, Brad, when you thought about this, just the way he almost is completely confident in everything he does. I was thinking about the great scene where he takes a hitchhiker in, which is really like this guy inviting the future into the car. And there's a kind of an eagerness in that too. And I wonder, you would talk about that a little bit, because it's such a great scene.
Well, I think it's look for the best in people, but expect the worst. And don't be surprised by either. I would say was his code. Yeah, and there's a bit of danger in the scene because we know it's so loaded. We know it's the Manson family, so we don't. I mean, anything can happen, couldn't it? So
We know it, and we know he doesn't know it.
and we know he doesn't know it. But Hitchhiker's played by Margaret Qualley. She's fantastic in it, and just a great exchange and a bit of dialogue that only Tarantino can write.
He's right here. Just so you know. But that's why I was talking about all this time stuff.
He has to speak me in the third person whenever I'm around.
As do we all. Tarantino.
No, but
Gets
no. But we all, his Tarantino's dialogue. Quentin's dialogue. No, it is, when you say Tarantino dialogue, it means something. It has a very specific style, cadence, flavor, and resonance, cadence, and so it is. I look at it as its own thing, its own entity that exists out there. So I make a joke about, because you'll hear other directors say, like, if there was a particular scene that was particularly violent or something, they say, we went full Tarantino today. So the name is beyond the person. There's meaning behind it. That's my explanation for it.
But it's funny you're saying all these things, because in a way this movie is responding to that in some way. The expectation of what a full Tarantino is.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this before. I mean, there's a consciousness in there that gives you a chance to sort of upend what people are going to come to expect from you.
Yeah, I don't know how I can't really deal directly with that question, at least as far as the end is concerned. But one of the things I think a way that's a little off the beaten track that I tried to upend what you would expect in this film is I worked on it a long time, almost like workshopping the characters on the page and trying to figure out who they were and is who they were, basically. And I wasn't in any hurry. So I spent a couple of years doing that. And then I figured out who they were and what I wanted to do. Then I actually had to figure out, okay, now what kind of story do I want to tell with these characters? And I think at some different points in time, I'd thought of a more melodramatic storyline that I could have had, the two of them follow, or maybe Sharon fits into it into some degree or another. And then I thought about it, and I thought, I don't know if I want to do that on this. I don't think I want to have a story at all. I think I just wanted to be a day in the life of these characters. Now we're going to head to a very tragic, eventful day, and that's going to be our dramatic motor, knowing that we're going to that day. Now even that is kind of risky because that could really risk being bad taste. And but I don't mind risking bad taste. I don't want to fall into it, but I don't mind risking it. If I felt I didn't pull it off, I probably wouldn't have made the movie. I would have just, it would have been an experiment on this page that didn't work. And I actually like doing chancy material that I might not pull off. It's my job to pull it off. But the thing is, though, but I actually thought it would be interesting to just have a situation where I don't have to come up with a story. It's just a day in the life.
And we should probably end it there because I'm getting dirty looks from everybody else around here except for you guys. So that's it. Thank you guys for being here. And I'll take off with my 1969 Poochie shirt, which I wore just for this.
All right.
Well done.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Oh, thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.